This morning, we talk about the communion of saints, and it's a takeoff from last week where we talked about the universal church, the Holy Catholic Church, which means God's holy universal church, Christians around the globe. And what's our identity? That's who we are. We are part of this huge church, God's people. And today we try to figure out, how do we live as God's people? How do we live as the communion of saints? This is a community, a gathering of the local church. We talked about the big church last week. We've got to talk about, how do we live in God's community of people here at Celebration in Muskegon. So I put the big idea for today on the board so that nobody misses it. The communion of the saints is the local community of God's people living for God together. I think we missed that last little bit sometimes. Together. I'll say it again. The local community of God's people living for God together. You know, it's been a COVID year. We've had a COVID year where everybody has to reset how they're going to do their lives. They said, okay, we're all locked down, and then we have to figure out, all right, we want to get back to what things are important in my life. What am I going to do in life? How am I going to live? And for some people, they've looked at the church and said, maybe. And some of that's our fault. We've not given that compelling reason why we need a community of saints here, a communion of people, God's people. And sometimes it's our actions that betray us, and people look at us and say, well, why do I want to be part of that? They're just messed up as I am. And sometimes they're just more hypocritical than I am. Why do I want to be a part of that? And maybe it's as the atheists say, that, you know, Christianity will fade away in less than 50 years. Is that the local church? The local church has got to be more than that. It's got to be the thing that drives people together and say, this is our hope for the world, the local church. That's what we're going to talk about. How do we live as God's people? How do we live for Him together? Let me go into this. And in order to talk about the communion of saints, we need to go to the Olympics. And is anybody here, did anybody not know that there's the Olympics this summer? Woo! Everybody knew. Awesome. I love that. Some are saying, what's the Olympics? And some are saying, well, I didn't know it was this year. I thought it was last year. But last year, again, was COVID year. So they're doing it this summer, July. And nobody's excited. It's okay. The framework for living as a group of people, a community of people, is like the Olympics. And it's not just going to the Olympics, being in the crowd. It's racing in the Olympics. And you are going to race in the Olympics, and you're all excited. No. You know, there's some of us, man, I don't race. You know, I tried in middle school. They forced me. It was a bad experience. I haven't run since. I might pull a hamstring. I don't know. Some of you just don't, they're not grabbing on to the idea of running in the Olympics. It's okay. I don't want you to get lost in the imagery here, but the idea of a race is what we go for today. That's the body of Christ running a race of life. You know, my personal style is a little bit more relaxed, so mine might be a leisurely walk. I'm in the walking event at the Olympics, you know, and other people are like, I'm the 100-meter dash. This is all me. And, however, we're in a race. We are in a race, and it's not how you start; it's how you finish. You know, God's not up there with a stopwatch. No, a little slow on that one. Kick up your game. He's checking out how you're going to finish this race. How are you running your race? So that's the imagery I want to get to you today. We're in a race. We're at the Olympics. Let me read this to you, because that's where the writer of Hebrews said, I'm going to talk to you about the body of Christ. I'm bringing you to the Olympics. And here he starts. Hebrews chapter 12. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up. And let us run with endurance the race God has set before us. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. I want to jump right to the stories of encouragement. Because the author, the whole book of Hebrews was like a huge sermon, and he jumps into this one and he goes directly to the people and says, let's apply this. We got to talk about it as a body of Christ. And I want to talk to you about this huge crowd of witnesses. And we say, well, who are those? Who are these cloud of witnesses? Who are all these people? Are they like ghosts just hanging around us? Who are these people? Go home today. Open it up to Hebrews chapter 12 and then go one page back. And you get to Hebrews chapter 11, and it's called the Hall of Fame of Faith. These are all people throughout God's history that God has used to advance His story of how He loves His people and is bringing them into relationship. And He used these flawed people to be witnesses of God's great story. So in Hebrews chapter 11, he talks about, by faith, Moses. And he led these people, these stubborn people, not like us, these stubborn people out of Egypt. Led them around in the desert, and he had some anger issues. And who wouldn't have anger issues with stubborn people around you? By faith, God used him to lead His people where He wanted them to go. By faith, you had people that did what God wanted them to do. And He listed them in the Bible. And here, big ones like, by faith, Joshua. By faith, Rahab the prostitute. You never hear her mentioned without her last name. Her last name, the prostitute. Now, Rahab the prostitute. God even used prostitutes to do His work, to lead people to know Him and lead them to where He wanted them to be. These are the witnesses. Their stories are what we read about. And they yell out to us, hey, don't give up. Stay the course. I know it's tough. I know you feel defeated, but keep going. You can do it. All through history it's been this way. You know, not even in the Bible. After the Bible was written, you had people that were part of these witnesses that we read their stories. One of my favorite early church fathers is this guy named Chrysostom, who he was the bishop in Rome, and he got to be the bishop, and he said, man, the church has got a lot of money, got a lot of things, and people are starving. You know what we need to do? We need to sell these things. We need to get rid of these things so we can feed the poor, that we can house them, that we can help them get back on their feet. And the other people said, no, we can't do that. This is holy stuff. And he says, what? And he's one of my favorite. I love his story. I like the story of people like Augustine and Martin Luther. You know, these are people that lived for Jesus, and we hear their stories yelling to us saying, you can do it. Don't give up. I know it's tough. Carry on. You can do this. It's their stories that we hear. And even in my short time here, we hear the stories of people that have gone before us. And I've been here almost 10 years, and I hear the story of Bobby at the front door just welcoming people like they're rock stars. Welcome home. It's good to see you. It's a great story of welcoming and encouraging. I hear stories like Brian, who was always saying, all right, I'll give you that little encouragement to be the pastor you need to be. I hear the stories of people like Thelma and Freddie and Paula, and even Jim from not too long ago. They tell the stories of faith and say, no, don't give up. You can do this. I know times are tough. You can do this. Keep going. We are surrounded by stories of encouragement, and we need to grab a hold of. That is the Christian walk. I have to give a side note here, a second. And I got to draw your attention to other parts of Hebrews chapter 2, these two verses, the we language, as in we. He was talking to not just one person, it was we together. He said stuff like, since we are surrounded, let us do this. We need to get rid of these things that trip us up. It was written to us as people, a communion of saints. We get this idea that we're supposed to do life by ourselves. Don't we? We have this, someone like put this hurdle of individuality in front of us. No, I don't do it with anybody else. I do my life by myself. But Christians were never meant to run alone. We run the race with others. You know, I'll get onto this later about everybody has their lane, but we run together, we train together, we encourage each other together. Christian life was never meant to run alone. We need each other. In some ways, we look at this and say, you know, other people are so inconvenient. They slow my race down. Sometimes we need to be inconvenienced by other people so that we understand it's not all about us. We run together. You know, Paul said this in Philippians, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves. Not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. We run together. We train together. We build each other up together. Don't get sucked into this individuality thing. That's not the Christian walk. I'm not going to throw that out with the bathwater there, because we need to have this can-do attitude, but we can do it together. Take a risk. Be a part of a grouping of people. I spent a little time on that one. We need to listen to the encouragement, these stories of other people, but we also run our race. We need to run it light, unburdened. Let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that trips us up. Imagine the next event is the 2-mile run, and I'm not sure why anyone wants to run that long, but it's the 2-mile event. And the announcer says, all runners to the 3,200-meter race to the starting lines. And wouldn't it be odd if someone dressed like us comes into the starting blocks? You know, maybe they've got their computer bag on them. They got their iPhone 27, I think it's up to that now. And they've got all their things. Wouldn't you think that was odd? It's just totally crazy. And they say, no, I need my iPhone 27 because there I get my Twitters and then I do all my gaming Twitches or whatever you got there, and that's what you have. I need all this stuff. And you say, why? It's slowing your race down. It's going to trip you up. You're going to trip over your phone. Do we understand that this is extra weight that slows us down, that is not helpful in your walk or run? This race is run light. Runners don't carry extra weight. And here, I want to be really clear on this one. I want to tell you what a weight is. A weight is anything that keeps you from becoming everything that God has made you to be. Anything that keeps you from becoming all that God has called you to be. Do we know what those are in our lives? Do we know what those weights are? I got this guy, James Merritt, made an easy to remember four ideas, 4 questions to understand what's a weight in your life. What is something that weighs you down? And I'm going to walk through this. But I need to go this way. Will you decide right now that if God convicts you, this is a weight in your life, that you will put it to the side? And before we even go into this, because sometimes we say, oh yeah, I love these lists. I love a list. And if you go through the list, that'll help me understand it. And that's not the point. I don't want you to understand it. I want you to get rid of the weight. It's okay to understand, oh, this is a weight in my life, but it doesn't do good to say, oh, I like that weight. I'll just put it on my back again. I want you to decide to get rid of the weight. Talk with somebody else, with some of your other training partners here, to get rid of the weight. Will you decide that? I won't make you say, yes, I will do that. However, it's between you and God. I'm just encouraging you to do this. Let me give you 4 questions on whether something's a weight in your life. Does it build me up spiritually? Does it build me up spiritually? There's so many things that we do in life that we think that they're just what it is. But chances are, if it's not building you up spiritually, it's leading you to weigh you down. It might be something even good. It's a good thing. But maybe it's leading you, it's more of a weight. Does it build you up spiritually? Does it bring me under its power? Nobody here is free of some sort of addiction. Can we just say that? We all have one. Can we work towards leaving that weight aside? Can we do that? Well, we're all talking freely here. We all have something that is a weight, I am just so powerless sometimes to that. I need somebody else, another training partner, to help me get rid of it. Does it build me up spiritually? Does it bring me under its power? Does it burden my conscience? Is it something that if I do this, I am so guilt-ridden? I am the worst of the worst when I do this. Can we just say that it's a weight that is unnecessary? Can we leave that? Can we work with some people to put that one aside? Let me get rid of that weight. And does it block someone from Jesus? How many of us have things that if other people look into our lives, they say, well, how does that work? You follow Jesus and this is also part of it? Does that make sense in some way? And sometimes it's one of our addictions that do this. And people say, what are you doing? This is another weight that sometimes pushes some people that don't know Jesus to the side. Were you convicted of some of your weights? Oh, I encourage you to, if you can't just decide now that you'll work on that. Come and talk with me. Talk with some of your other training partners and put the weights to the side. Because the race of life is meant to be run light. Throw off all those things that trip you up. Let me go one step further here. We need to run the race that God has given you. God has given you a race. Let us run with endurance. And here's the key phrase. The race God has set before us. And God has given each of us a race. And it's your race. It's not my race. It's your race. I have my own race. We get in this envy idea. Oh, they've got such an easy life. They've got more money in their lane. I wish I were in their lane. They have nicer kids than my lane has. I don't say that. Just thought I'd tell you guys all that. All right, good. All right. They've got a better job in their lane. They've got a bigger house in their lane. I like their lane. I'm envious of their lane. God says, stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. That's the one I've given you. Stay in your lane. It was the 2018 World Championships, the 400-meter race, which is basically a sprint for 400 meters. These guys are tremendous athletes. There was one heat in this World Championships. There's 5 runners. One, he started early and he got disqualified. 4 of them left. And they start running, and before they finished, the rest of the 4 were disqualified because they went out of their lane before they were allowed to. All 4 of them. The World Championships, they were disqualified because they got out of their lane. They said, oh, I'll get a better time if I can get into that lane quicker. We think that with our lanes that God has given us. You know, they have an easy life. They have less pain in their lane. God has given you this lane. Stick with your lane. Don't get in the envy and the jealousy part of this. Last thing. We're going to run this race of life. We're running the race of life, and we do it focused on Jesus. The whole race of life doesn't make sense without Jesus as our focus. It doesn't. It's just like, what? We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. He was our champion. He's already run the race of life and came out the winner. He says, keep your eyes on me. Follow me. Stay in your lane. I'm a champion here. Come on, you can do this. He was our teammate who won the victory. He runs ahead of us, always urging us on. He's the object of our faith. John Stephen Akwari from Tanzania. He's going to run the marathon. 26.2 miles. Again, why do people want to run that long? I don't know. He's with 75 other people from other countries who are running this marathon. And he wasn't favored to win, but his chances plummeted when there was a pileup of people. There was this huge pile of people that just tripped over one. I don't know how it happened. Wasn't there. But Akwari comes out with a gashed knee. It's dislocated. He landed on his shoulder. And he is in some bad shape. This is what they expected him to go off with the 18 other people to the hospital, get treated. No, not Akwari. He says, just wrap it up. Give me some medical attention. Wrap it up with some gauze and some tape. I can do this. It was getting dark when he came back to the stadium. Because they start in the stadium and then they go out in the streets and then they come on back. It was almost an hour, and I was going to say over an hour and a half, but it was definitely over an hour since the first person ended the race. And he comes into the stadium. Most people had left already. There was a few thousand people there yet, and they're just screaming for him. He kept running. He was suffering from fatigue, leg cramps, dehydration. He was a little disoriented, but he kept running. In the middle of all of that, limping along with his leg. And he crossed the finish line. A reporter asked him later, Akwari, why didn't you just quit? Why didn't you go off to the hospital like all these other people and get treated? And he said this, and hopefully this rings for us who are tired and fatigued and limping through life. Hopefully this rings true. Hear what he said. My country did not send me here to start the race, My country sent me here to finish it. Our God has sent us here to finish the race, to keep going, even in times are tough. To hear those encouraging stories of people that have gone before us, that urge us on to say, you can do it, keep going. He sent us here to set aside every weight that keeps us from running the race we're supposed to run. He sent us here to stay in your lane. Keep going in your lane, not somebody else's lane, your lane. He sent us here to keep our eyes on Jesus, the champion, the one who goes before us and is always there beside us. This is the race of life that we run together as God's communion of saints here at Celebration. May this be the race of life that we run with Jesus and his people every day. Let's pray as God's people who run the race.